Do you want me to hold her? My munchkin. Hello, Munch.
I feel like you're going to be seeing a lot of Ellie in our videos.
Munch. Yes.
Because this baby
it's not because she's
like
a prop.
nap.
It's because she just won't nap during video time.
Just won't nap.
You got nap during video time, my sweet.
So, you may have been watching on your social media feeds this week. You may have seen this video pop up of a grown man confronting a group of women in bikinis on a public beach and telling them that they are causing him and his 9-year-old son to lust.
Yeah, and there were Bible verses invoked on either side. It's really, it's kind of interesting.
I thought it was a hilarious video at first. Like, I didn't think it was real when I first saw it.
And he also responded on his own TikTok about why he did this.
That it was from righteous anger and
but
indignation.
but this brings up a lot about Christians wearing bikinis, calling people out that you don't know.
For their quote-unquote sin.
Yeah, so we've had some interesting discussions, and we thought we might share some of them with you.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Where should we start? Do you think that he had any merit to say, look, I'm here with my family at the beach, and what you're wearing is too revealing?
Comment below, guys, as well. We want to hear what your thoughts are. I personally think that is just the weirdest thing ever. Like, if you go to the beach, assume people are going to be wearing bikinis.
Yeah, this is America in 2021. I can identify with him in that I was raised in a very anti-bikini subculture.
Yeah,
and the sort of
purity culture.
The thought was, if you're wearing a bikini or something revealing, it's because you want to draw guys' attentions to you.
I think he even said in his response, I want them to know that they're valued daughters of the king and they don't have to dress this way or something like that.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And that's weird to me because I don't know, as somebody who struggled with an eating disorder, the first time I ever got up the courage to wear a bikini, I was a senior in college in Australia. I wasn't even in my home country.
Far away from anyone who knew you, it sounds like.
There were no photos on Facebook. Actually, there may have been. But it was truly an act of courage for me. I've been so insecure about my body. I've hated myself so much that I've wanted to hide it. And now I'm going to go on the beach and wear a bikini like everybody else here. For me, that was a very healing moment.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know people's motivations. Whether they're wearing a bikini or something else, I think it's condescending to read motivation into what somebody's doing.
Yeah. I mean, as God said to Samuel, man looks on the outside, what you're wearing, but God looks at the heart. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of presumptuous, very presumptuous of us to look at someone who's outfit and say, we know their heart. We know what they're trying to do to men, or we know what they're trying to say about themselves. No matter what your stance on bikinis, that's a very, you really are playing God.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you don't know those people. Why are you going up and telling them something?
Yeah. Do you really think that that's going to draw them closer to God?
Because isn't that the point? Yeah.
Yeah. We're here to be the hands and feet of God. Jesus isn't on this world anymore, but instead his people are here to be an expression of his love. I just can't see a situation in which someone is like, oh my goodness, that was so encouraging that you confronted me.
I feel so loved.
Yeah, I feel the love of God. I feel drawn towards God. I don't know that doing that to someone you don't know at all is a great witness, or even to someone that you do know in front of other people.
Yeah,
I think calling people out publicly is just
humiliating.
Yeah, it makes them feel humiliated, and they feel compelled to defend themselves rather than having a conversation with you. When you look at Jesus and the sort of people Jesus called out for about their sin, it really was mostly the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
He once said to Peter, someone he was very close to, get behind me, Satan, because of something Peter said. But mostly he was calling out the Pharisees, i.e. the people who thought they were really good. Like the woman at the well, the woman caught at adultery. Jesus goes much lighter at them than you would think.
And even the woman at the well, he tells her that she's had 5 husbands, but the whole point was to reveal himself as the Messiah. It wasn't, the point wasn't to call her out on her sin. It was to reveal Jesus.
Yeah. And you almost feel like if Jesus was on that beach, he probably would have been talking to the guy about the log in his eye rather than the women.
Yeah, and even for people we know well, we've been thinking a lot about this. So the Bible lays out some different scenarios where we can call people out and how to do that. One is in Matthew 18. It's if someone has sinned directly against you, here's what you do. do it privately. There's one for if a leader in your church is sinning, here's what you do. And there's one for if someone who loves God is like kind of walking away from the faith, here's what you do. But there's not a whole lot of guidance in just calling random people out. And I wonder if that's on purpose, because maybe we're not supposed to be doing it. A quick addendum here. Some of you are going to say, well, there are verses about calling people out in love. And I just want to talk about a couple of those because we totally forgot to mention them in the video. James 5 concludes by saying, if someone among you wanders away from the truth and is brought back, you can be sure that whoever brings that person back from wandering will save that person from death. There's another verse in Galatians 6:1 where it says, if another believer is overcome with some sin, you should gently and humbly help that person back on the right path. But all of these things are talking about within the context of the church, brothers and sisters. So it's people that you are in community with, that you know, that you've invested, you've loved on them, you're a part of their life. And it's all in gentleness and meekness and humility. I think being slow to speak, like the Bible talks about, is much better than being quick to call someone out. Yeah, okay, let's get back to the video. When I was in my 20s, one of my best friends and I were talking, and I said to him, I've seen like how much of a control freak I am. And he's like, oh, you're noticing that, Tiffany, good for you, like in joking. And I was like, wait, did you know that? He's like, yeah, it's obvious. And I was like, it wasn't to me. What other things am I obviously struggling with that I don't know about? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you. And I was like, why? He's like one of my best friends. He's like, because God will show you in his time when he wants to deal with that thing. And there's no point in me pointing it out ahead of time. And it just like, to me, that was very profound and very wise to say like, God will show you. It's not like God does everything at once in our lives.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of like, my mom was in a Bible study with this lady who swore like a sailor. And she said that at first she was horrified. And then she learned the lady's backstory and how far God had already brought her on her healing journey. And like, God didn't start with the swear words. He doesn't always start with the obvious. He starts in our hearts. And so like, my mom was like, once I understood a little more of where she was coming from, I stopped judging her so much.
Yeah. And that's like,
that was years ago. My mom is very non-judgmental now.
Yeah. There's always a lot of disagreement. Well, I need to stand up for what's right. I need to be a witness in that way. And, but you don't always know. We're just people. We don't know what God is doing in the world or in other people's lives. And even if God is displeased with something that someone is doing, does that really mean that we, the hands and feet of God, ought to be the one telling that person? I think a lot of times the answer is no. I mean, certainly there are some times when someone is close to you and you pray about it and you think about it and you're like, I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should. And you go back and forth. And sometimes you really do need to try to speak the truth in love.
I think I can think of 2 or 3 times when like that's been my case. Like I just really feel like I need to say something to this person. I feel like this is hurting them, or hurting their relationship or whatever. And feel like I need to say something. I don't know if I should, and going back and forth, getting counsel and all this stuff. And then there's been those 2 or 3 times I've said something, and honestly, like I'm not even sure how much it actually helped. To be honest, like I don't know that it.
Yeah, so there's no question. Should you pray about it, and if you feel led to do something, should you say something? Sometimes yes, but you have to realize that a lot of times it's just not super effective.
I think sometimes we want to say something because we're uncomfortable. It's more about us than about the other person. Like, especially when it comes to modesty rules. And we talk about modesty in some other videos I'll link below. We have a very different take than what we grew up in church with. But I think a lot of times it has more to do with our comfort, our insecurities. Like when we first got married, I always thought he was going to check out other girls. And so I would not have wanted to sit on the beach next to girls in bikinis because I'd be so afraid that he would rather look at them than at me. But I don't feel afraid of that anymore. And I never would have gone up to those girls and said something to them. But like, I think sometimes when people speak out about modesty, it's more about them than about loving the other person.
And when it comes to modesty, like the Sermon on the Mount very squarely puts the burden of lust on guys. Like if you look at a woman with lust, and then you've committed adultery. So it's not if she wears this, then it's okay. You wear that false or whatever. Lust can happen regardless of what's being worn or not worn. And so I don't know that there's really the sort of burden that we grew up with for, girls to wear this or wear that. And, the reality is so many people were hurt by people saying you shouldn't wear this. And I don't know that anyone was drawn closer to God by someone saying you shouldn't wear this. So
not in the stories I've heard. Yeah.
I think it's something we just have to let be and get away from.
And it's not sin. It's subjective. Modesty is not this. The Bible is not like black and white. Here's what you do and don't wear. Like, so much of it, like we've talked about in other videos, is cultural, is what's appropriate for the setting. So I guess if I was a youth pastor and some guys started coming to youth group in Speedos and girls in bikinis, I would be like, guys, you got to wear clothes to youth group. You know what I mean? Like, put a sign on the door like restaurants do. Clothes required and shoes. But like, I don't know. Beyond that, I don't think it's usually helpful. And are you saying, I used to think, well, but it's the girl's responsibility to help the guy not to lust. And I think that comes from a few places. One being, we don't know what lust really is. There's this idea that lust is noticing that a woman is attractive and saying, oh, wow, she's an attractive person. That's not lust. Lust is like turning that idea over and over and letting it marinate in your mind.
Yeah.
And girls do this too. We act like guys are the only ones who visually lust after someone. That is not true. It can be just as hard for women. It just depends on the person.
And I remember growing up as a teenager thinking like, am I lusting? Am I not lusting? I don't know. This is very stressful.
Exhausting.
It was difficult for me to talk to girls really without thinking like, does she like me? Do I like her? Am I lusting? What's going on? Like, That's a lot.
And I think there's this book called The Great Sex Rescue by Sheila Gregor, and she talks about how when we see lust that way, it objectifies women just as much as lusting after them, because it's turning us into this object that we consider dangerous in purity culture, because it's like, and so you don't want to look at them, you don't want to talk to them. She has all these stories in her book of men treating women this way. And I think if we could
and they're not just her stories. She surveyed, what's cool about this book is she surveyed 20,000 women. And so there's quite a bit of data that she's drawing a lot of these conclusions from.
I'll link that book below too. It's very interesting. Yeah, and so like this idea of lust that we have in church culture is very objectifying to women. If we could kind of get away from that and start seeing women, this is what the book says too, start seeing women as whole people, getting to know them, talking to them, getting to know their personality and their interests and a whole person, it changes how we view people. I mean, you even look at, like, we have friends who are professional artists, and so they've had to paint people in the nude. A nude body is not, I don't want to say not sexual because we are sexual beings, but like it's not like a lust thing. Like it's not the same thing for them as looking at porn or lusting after someone. It's just same as with the doctors. We know it's very like art and science. You know what I mean? It's not, it's like, it's a body.
The sexuality is not the first thing they think of.
Right, exactly. So I think like if we could appreciate bodies in that way more in our culture and in the evangelical world, that would be so healthy. Yeah, I want to hear if you've been called out, tell us about it. Was it a positive growth experience for you and did you feel loved? Or was it a negative, detrimental experience for you? Let us know. I'm curious to hear your honest thoughts. So thank you guys for being with us today, and we'll see you again next week.
You might see Eliana next week
the
too.
videos and books below. Yeah, she'll be here too, I'm sure.